Ah yes, Spike, one of the most iconic brawlers in Brawl Stars. Present ever since the first day of Brawl Stars, Spike has always managed to be a popular brawler among the community and a fan favorite. Today we'll be going over the history of this interesting yet lovable cactus. Spike was released as one of the two legendary brawlers in beta other than Crow. And legendary, he deserved that title, because not only would his attack split, but he was the first brawler to introduce a slowdown ability. Plus, his attack would split randomly. 2 weeks after release, he would get the first balance change, which was sadly a nerf. His HP would be nerfed from 700 to 600. Wait, 700? 600? Yep. That was the HP back then. It was a pretty decent nerf because he was tanky and at the same time his attack range was long. Plus he had the super with the unique slowdown ability, which practically gave him an advantage above others, which made him one of the best brawlers. About 3 months later, he would get another nerf. This time Spike's super slow duration now decreases once out of its area of effect. Why? Because back then, even when you left Spike's area of effect, you would still slightly be slowed down. Yup. He was that good. A month later, he would finally get his first buff, a super projectile speed increase, which quite helped him. 2 months later, his star power would be added, Fertilize, which gave him 600 HP. And of course you might be thinking, wait, 600 and 600? That doesn't make sense. But no, every brawler's health and damage were multiplied by 4. So that means he would heal 25% of his health. That's why this was a very good star power, because it gave him more survivability, hence why it was nerfed down to only heal 500 instead of 600 per second. Honestly, the nerf just tickled him. He was always S tier. So far, as you could notice, the balance changes were mostly minor tweaks. Later, he'd get a reload speed buff from 2.2 seconds to 2 seconds, which was pretty significant. Then would come some big changes. In 2018, his main attack projectile size was increased. That's right, his attack became bigger, and though generally every single brawler had their movement speed and projectile speed increased to make the game feel more dynamic, more exciting. And if you take 650, which was the old normal speed, we would pretty much compare it to Bonnie today. However, before the game's global launch, he would be hit with his range nerf of his split range with from 5 to 4.33 tiles. Plus, his attack was finally given a fixed pattern, because not only did it annoy the opponent, but it also annoyed you as a player, because you just didn't know whether or not you would hit your opponent. Then the game was globally launched on December 2018. There, Spike got a full remodel alongside his Pinkie Pike skin. That's right, it wasn't Sakura, it was Pinkie Spike. We can see as everything right here happened at the 29th of January 2019. Plus, the Pinkie Spike, aka Sakura Spike, was converted from a rare skin to a super rare skin from 30 to 80 gems. However, they gave it a bunch of unique textures and they made Spike generally look more colorful. And Spike is still as good as ever. However, he still received a buff at the April. Quickfire now takes into account the added range from the projectile spinning. I have no idea. And Spike's main attack effects were polished. Later, we had the Monsters of Summer update. An update that not only did it bring Spike a new skin, Robo Spike, but it also brought one of the most annoying star powers ever. Curveball. On release, its angle was different and it was much faster than today. Hence why his little innocent face no longer affected players, because a lot started to hate him because of this magical star power that made him not really need to aim. That, of course, made the fertilized star power pretty much dead, so Brawl Stars buffed it just to make it compete with this new broken star power. And these buffs were major. This was the reason why Curveball became a casual star power, better for noob stomping. As for Fertilize, competitive players still used it because, of course, they slowly learned how to dodge this star power. Though Curveball would still be nerfed just to respect the casual players. In fact, its distance and power angle were halved. That's how strong it was. Spike was pretty much still a decent brawler, not S tier, maybe A tier or something like that. He was never bad, he was never good so far. We can see that he was always pretty much good, and his violence changes were mostly minor tweaks, which shows that he's really a balanced brawler. It's 2020 and Spike gets a buff to the spike damage from 940 480 to 520. Man, I can't read. Big updates, gadgets are added to the game, and the buff mommy is going rampant with an apocalypse. Of course, Spike also had a gadget, popping concussion. It wasn't really broken, it just helped him a bit. After a curveball buff, the popping concussion gadget would get a nerf, pretty much a bug fix, making it no longer affected by the curveball star power. That's right. The game files rendered his gadget pretty much as an attack, so it also went in the same way as a curveball. A bit later, that gadget got a rework. I don't know what kind of rework. Maybe the style of the gadget, I guess. Later, his spike damage would be buffed again by 40 and his supercharge rate was increased slightly. They were too lazy to say a value. I mean, his attack is already quite complicated to say the definite supercharge rate. A week after the last change, we got one of the best rare skins, Mask Spike. Basically Spike, but with like 7 different masks that change every time you respawn. To this point, Spike is still balanced. After a small reload speed nerf, he would not be touched for like 2 months, until we got the first skin where Spike actually talks, Dark Lord Spike. Released in 2021, used to be exclusive. It was a very cool skin for an epic one. Another 2 months later, yes, another 2 months, they would revert the reload speed nerf, then add the 2 wacky True and Silver and True Gold skins. You might have noticed the big time interval between the balance stages. Again, this shows that Spike is a really nice brawler, not too strong, not too bad. However, that would change with the addition of second gadgets, where Spike got his plant life gadget 3 months after the previous update, but they would soon 2 months later have a bug fix because it couldn't be launched by jump pads. The issues with the gadgets are the following: too much health, like 3,500, that's similar to Spike's health at that time, and it would heal 1,000, which was a lot back then. This gave Spike way too much survivability as a glass cannon. Glass cannons are basically damage dealers that don't have much HP, and Spike perfectly fixed that role. Other than the infamous big game glitch, which made the Plant Life gadget have way too much HP. And for some reason it took Brawl Stars a while to notice that, because after adding the Logamus Spike skin, which is basically a reference to the log from Clash Royale, they wouldn't nerf the gadget until 6 whole months after its release. And oh boy did they nerf it. They turned the HP from 3,500 to 1,750. They halved the health. That was enough to tone down the gadget and decrease the sudden exaggerated survivability Spike had. And the next year, he had the Pyro Spike skin, which for some reason is related to Stunt Show. He would have his mythic gear at the December. And first thing he got in 2023 was his price modification for Logamus and Pyro Spike. Yup, my friends, a year without balance changes. 2 months later, the irrelevant gadget and star powers would get some buffs, but a big buff for this popping concussion gadget, going from 520 to 800, Fertilize going from 800 to 1000. Then he had the general changes, just like every single brawler, which made the upgrades give 10% more damage and health instead of 5%. Then he had his hypercharge, pretty basic one. Impressively, even without any changes, he managed to go up to S tier, and that's another thing that makes Spike so unique. Sometimes he's great, sometimes he doesn't seem that good, and he suddenly comes back to the meta. This has to be one of the most unpredictable brawlers, which really reminds me of the Bandit from Clash Royale. She has the same thing of being irrelevant sometimes, then suddenly becoming top meta, though in her game she's not as popular. But Spike didn't know though that he was in for a big round of buffs. In October, his popping concussion gadget damage was buffed by 96. His life plant gadget would finally be addressed by a minor HP buff and a minor damage buff, but The catch was the finally scaled with power levels. That means the more you upgraded Spike, the better the gadget became. Same for the second, for the star power, which had the heal increase of 8? Okay, but again, it also started scaling with power levels, alongside a little flavor text to give him some lore, in which we can see that he had trauma. Many people suggest that it was Colt for the first time seeing Spike and he was scared, so he just shot Spike, which made the eye in the mouth creepy. Another theory suggests, with some Star Park video on the release of Colette, that it was just someone who shot with something like Bull's shotgun. Though that flavor text change had no point. Literally. If you look at the end of the sentence, there's no point. 2 months later, he got a nerf to his mythic gear gadget, which decreased the slow buff from 50 to 30. Pretty major if you ask me. A little bug fixed with his poppin' percussion gadget damage. Then we got his first legendary skin, which ironically, of course, had no voice lines. Which you can see right here. It's funny. Nice Powerpuff Girls reference. Anyways, Spike was in for not a big round of buffs, but a big round of nerfs, all focusing on his hypercharge. After a little hypercharge boost, damage boost from 20 to 25%, his damage multiplier was reduced from 40 to 35, the speed was reduced from 30 to 26, but the most significant one was the shield boost from 20 to 5%, because Spike is a glass cannon, so why give him so much shield? Then a little minor change to every single brawler. Moving on in April, where Brawl Stars made the collab with Baby Shark, we had the infamous mythic skin Poop Spike added. However, Spike got even more nerfs in the same month, with a damage nerf of 20 with the main attack damage and the pop and percussion gadget from 896 to 864, which is very tiny. Then a little modification to sound Poop Spike's sound effects to make them sound more disgusting. And about a week later, Brawl Stars made a collab with Godzilla and introduced mutations, and Spike's popularity made them get one, which is basically 12 spikes, or I don't know. It was pretty strong. And then we have Spike's mutation, of course, was removed pretty much a month later. Everything was going well, Spike chilling with his big fan base, until he got an even bigger round of buffs than the one we previously mentioned. His health was increased from 2,400 to 2,600, making it a total of 5,200 at max level. Just to deal with the damage inflation in the game, the Life Plans gadget had a minor damage buff. As for the healing, and also the healing of that same gadget, the first July star power was also buffed. Life was feeling like cookies and rainbows for Spike. S tier, everything's perfect, what could possibly go wrong? And of course, something went wrong. Something big, massive if you feel like it, ginormous if you fancy it. It's the Angels and Demons glitch. For about a week, Spike was invincible, all due to a glitch that concerned the unpopular fertilized star power. This would make the game think that the demonic fire ability, which would leave trails behind any brawler, pretty much an area like Spike's super, because Spike had no area other than the super. This, and the top bit to the fact that the area used to stack, made Spike invincible. And Spike was about to face the worst fate in his lifetime. He was temporarily disabled, like Jean, Willow, Bonnie, and Ash. Alright, enough with the depressing topics. He got the last balance changes were a round of buffs. Health buff from 2,600 to 2,800, which made it 5,600 instead of 5,200 at max level. Life Plans gadget was again buffed the HP and damage slightly. Same thing for the fertilized star power. Yep, that was the last set of balance changes he had. That concludes it with the long yet consistent history of Spike, one of the most iconic brawlers in Brawl Stars. If you like the video, comment, like, and subscribe if you want, and suggest me another history video to make in case you want. You can say in the comments down below, as I've already said. And yep, see you in the next one.